I want to start this video out by just saying, by no means am I an expert on cryptocurrency or even Ethereum, but I am definitely knowledgeable. I think when it comes to entrepreneurship and innovation and innovative ideas, I've had the rare opportunity to pitch a variety of VCs with some mobile technology a couple years back. Participated in pitching Microsoft Ventures as well as a local accelerator group in the Cincinnati area. So um, the reason I bring this up is sometimes even when you're unfamiliar with every detail and somebody who's kind of worked in the entrepreneur space and has attempted to raise capital and looked at scalable concepts versus those that may not be, you start to see patterns in what you think could be a tool that just kind of blows up and transforms the way we think about a certain industry sector. So, my thoughts today aren't going to be so much on the finite or on the kind of granular details of Ethereum, but more what I think about Vitalik, the one of the founders of Ethereum, and what I think it could do to the financial industry, and just kind of thinking more about the transaction types that it will change. So Mark Pincus is a gentleman that founded Zynga. It's kind of one of the first social mobile games that caught fire with, I think they had Words with Friends and a number of other hits. But the reason I bring Mark up is he has this kind of thought that the best products are things that you can't even remember your life before and you can't imagine your life without. I think that that's a powerful thought. When we think of, I think, innovations that change our life, you think about, maybe Amazon Prime with this free 2-day delivery or sometimes same-day delivery, I guess, if you're thinking about Prime now, in all the pain of going to the store and doing all this stuff before, it's like you can't even imagine your life without almost instantaneous delivery of goods. Another thing, it's like if I think about travel, even a couple years back, having to get a yellow cab if you're in a bigger city, that was a huge kind of frustrating point. Now with Uber and Lyft on your phone, you're just instantaneously connecting with a ride, and it's usually like a transparent pricing system and all of that. These kind of innovations that it's just like, even when you think of life a few years back, it's just completely transformed. Okay. And I pointed out a few examples here, but I think Ether specifically as a token has those same transformative qualities of like a Prime or what we'll consider last mile shipping, or Uber with kind of the instantaneous connection with a ride when you need to get from point A to point B. I think in terms of just kind of one snapshot of what this could be is a transactionary volume and a transactionary amount force that shatters what we think. Okay, let's dive into a quick example, right? If you use a service like Venmo or Zelle or, run down the list. When you're wanting to move money from person A to B, if I'm going to pay for a service through Venmo, which, I'll pay a number of people that help me with various projects. If I want to send them $200, $300, $500, whatever the kind of what we'll consider reasonable amount is, that's good. You send it to them. It takes a couple days for the transfer to go from your bank account to their account. And I think we've all kind of settled in like, oh, that's standard process, right? If you're going to be sending money digitally or kind of with this phone to phone transaction model, it's going to have a bank intermediary and it's going to take some time to clear. And if you're sending amount, I think less than $5,000, it's pretty simple, and you have to have the patience to wait a couple days for the money to go through the whole process of clearing and being ready to use. And while that's fine, I think we can't even yet imagine a life. And I think it's hard to even imagine how relevant this will be when it happens. It'll be like, God, why didn't we have this before? But when you're talking about transacting with cryptocurrency, and I think Ether is probably one of the leading ways, or, I think because of the way it's structured, it's probably going to end up being one of the leaders in this kind of wave of transacting very quickly. When we think about being able to transact using a system like this, the no wait time, the no kind of high limit on how much money you're going to port over, how much value you're going to port from one person to the other instantly, it's going to change things. And it seems very small, but that no wait time for the value to be transferred from person A to B in a secure, fast environment, I think will revolutionize things. And again, it seems very trivial that, oh yeah, you have to wait a couple of days for a bank to clear, the $700 or $800 somebody paid you to work on a project. But I think we're going to get to a stage where that waiting is a real hindrance. It's unnecessary. It can be done differently. It can be done quicker. It can be done without the wait game. And that value is going to kind of wipe out or be replaced with, so to speak, transacting differently. And I think, again, the Ethereum project, Ether as a token, will be one of the leaders that helps to make this transactionary volume and speed. It will take it to another level. Okay, if we think about Moore's law, right? Moore's law is the law about the processing speed for computing increasing. So I think it's every 24 months, and I don't know if this is right, but the processing power increased by 2x or whatever it is, right? A substantial increase, this exponential increase every couple years or every year, whatever it is. And the power of processing got better and better and better with time. I think the same thing. We're heading into a time period where transaction pace, transaction transparency, the amount, it's going to be so seamless, but it will have to be orchestrated on something as transparent as blockchain, and I think something as pliable as the Ethereum kind of concepts and the tools that they're building. I know that it doesn't sound that dynamic, but the pace of transacting with so many things or so much value being transferred every day, the fact that we can do this better is amazing. And I think especially for larger enterprise, the kind of movement of large values, once it's trusted, is going to be an invaluable resource that if you're moving slowly in value transfer, you're going to fall behind and be crushed maybe by newer competition that embraces this value transfer at the transactionary pace that will be available. We know this to be true because, like, if you look at services like AWS, where a startup company can kind of wrap their hands around large amounts of computing power, almost like flipping on a light switch, they started to beat companies that had to spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on computing infrastructure to kind of get going. They were starting with kind of these cloud tools that allowed them to open the box and get started in the game. I think similarly, if you are transacting very slow through old kind of bank established methods or doing contracts at this very slow pace, eventually a nimble company without that much backing or resource will use these free tools, or they'll just be more knowledgeable with tools that allow you to transact faster and more transparent and on a larger scale and all this stuff. And they will be able to beat that company, or they'll just be easier to work with and more people will value that company. So needless to say, I think that the reason I lean more on Ethereum and Ether than Bitcoin or maybe some of the other cryptocurrencies is I really like when there's a defined founder. And I get that cryptocurrency is about decentralization and being open and not having one person control it. And I think that that's good. But when I look at Vitalik, who's one of the founders for Ethereum, I think he has such a strong vision of the future. He talks about having featureless products, or being minimum with features so it has the most pliability. I believe he's the most forward-thinking person in this space, and that could be proven wrong. But I think he's creating the most value. I think he has kind of the largest amount of insight, and he seems to be able to get the implementation and buy-in from a community of developers. I think, again, the crypto space, kind of in terms of mass adoption, is about 10 years old. If you look at the internet in its first 10 years, it was clear that there were some players that were going to be sustainable, and clear that there were a ton of players that were not going to be sustainable. It's hard to really know who's the truth and who isn't. But I think if you look at just common sense, there are some people that are very pioneering with their thoughts, and they also back it up by showing you tangible value. They're releasing versions that are being used by developers of whatever they're releasing. They're making progress that's getting user adoption and user buy-in. People are implementing on the tool set. I think I think the Ethereum project is getting all that support. I think it's also unique. It's the second most valuable cryptocurrency now, and it kind of derives its price point from Bitcoin. But I could see a time where it supersedes Bitcoin, just because it's going to probably end up being something more people use, or it's going to have a better value in terms of its ability to transact with. I think it stands a strong chance of being superior over time, but it's so early in the state, in kind of the life cycle of the whole market space, that it's hard to say. But again, I have to go back to looking at founder qualities. If I had to bet kind of on a community that has mass adoption now, like Bitcoin, but no kind of centralized voice or thought leader, and I get that there's a number of people in that community that have strong opinions and voices, but I still like when projects are kind of spearheaded by one person, and especially a very smart person that can really communicate the vision and the voice of the space. And I think Vitalik does that so well. So I think where I'm at with it is I have a strong personal investment in the Ether tokens, and I'm looking to make sure that I can get some backing. This would be a 2-year process to invest even heavier in the purchase of more tokens. I would be willing to do this in the form of accepting money in a loan format that after 2 years repaying in a set percent interest. And again, I would personally back this. I'm so confident that there's going to be growth in this space. Or it could be some type of partnership with a percentage of increased return. So either way, what I want to do is just share that I think this is a strong investment. I think if you have the patience to wait 2 years, the space is going to mature quite a bit. I'm kind of putting my stock in, the Ethereum camp, but I think there's strong reason to do it. It's very volatile. It's very early. Right now, I'm going to share my screen. I'll kind of show some price history. But I think if you look at where the trend's heading, they're the strongest. They're the strongest currency that I think has the most upward potential. Not short term, but over the next 2 years, I think that the value and the user adoption and just kind of what the community will do will supersede, I think, any other coin in the space, or I'm sorry, any other cryptocurrency. I think it's just a strong bet to make. And again, I'm certainly petitioning for people to jump on board with me and, at least give this a go. Again, very speculatory, but I think has tremendous promise. I'm going to share my screen. We'll look at a chart off this Ethereum price website. Let me present here. There you go. So, if we look at this, you're going to see major volatility over the course of we'll start with the 1-year chart. And again, this is for Ethereum. If we look at the 1-year chart, right? So we're looking June 18. So back in June of 2018, each token was, let's say, between $569, and there was a high point there, $619, dipping significantly as you go into late June and early July to 400, and then it kind of went down and down and down and down and down. So you get these big dips, and it even went down further. In fact, it went down to $89, I think, early this year, and I may not be able to find it quickly. But you're looking at something last June, $500-$600. We get a dip down into the low hundreds. In fact, here we go. This was in December, really getting beat up. There we go. There was the 86. I said January, I was wrong. It was back in the December time period. We're going from $600 in June to 6 months later, you're down to 94. So you're going from triple digits to double digits, getting really beat up. And you look at the 1 year low, right? $82 1 year high, 627. So you have a negative $300, kind of annual change year to date now. And you think, why am I advocating for this? If there's such volatility, why do I think? I think that there's absolute, monstrous upside. If we look at a broader chart, you're going to see $1,400 as kind of the all-time high so far. But we're in a period, I think, where the user adoption and the maturity of the community kind of developing the tools that will make the Ether token something spendable, and implementing these smart contracts and all of the different usages of it. I think that the value over the next 2 years will increase enormously. I don't know if there's ever going to be like big time stabilization where you've got the each token moving on the market at $2,000 or $3,000, but I think you're going to see something where it doesn't have the same kind of extreme volatility that it does now. I believe over the next couple of years, you're going to see this easily stabilize up in the low 1,000s as kind of the minimum price. And then you may reach up over the $10,000 mark. In fact, you may get into the $20,000 mark, but it's going to get out of the hundreds, I think, just because we're still at this kind of very small, for I think what it's going to be, user pool. I think that there's going to be a lot of institutional investment, a lot of venture capital that floods into different really intelligent entrepreneurs building tools and useful applications on top of the Ethereum project. I think that you're going to see just a lot of adoption on the developer side to make this useful and applicable. And that kind of new interest in that, the new usefulness will bring a lot of positive attention to it. I think, again, from an institutional investment standpoint, there's probably going to be the ability to trade futures, Ether futures. I think that type of money is going to boost up not only the notoriety, but the value over time. And we're going to be out of the hundreds. So, I'm looking for folks that are willing to put in $10,000 investments chunks and are willing to wait out, knowing the volatility. We already looked at it. But again, up in the 600 range of June 2018, and then dipping in December all the way down, into the low 80s. Kind of the 6 months later, you were down into the low 80s. So just know it's not going to be a steady ride. But if you see kind of some of the same values that I'm seeing with its transactionary purposefulness and some of the things about the transparency that it can bring, if you feel like that's going to be revolutionizing value similar to an Amazon Prime and what that's done for retail and kind of the need it now society that we're living in, or the expeditiousness of getting a ride quickly like an Uber or Lyft, if you feel like that same type of mentality is going to port over into the transaction space, me giving you money for goods and services, or a business giving another business or a person some type of value for goods and services. If you think that spontaneity, that pace of transaction is going to port over into just transacting for values as I see it, then you'll know that this is a good investment. And I think if you do research into what the Ethereum project is, and a lot of good stuff can be found on ethereum.org, you'll see that this is maybe one of the smartest group collections of people backing one of these currencies, these new programmable currencies. I think that you'll see this is the kind of right route for big growth. So with all that said, encourage you to do some homework. Ethereum.org is a good starting place. YouTube's also got tremendous amounts of videos and smart lectures that can break this down much better than I can. All I'm looking at is the smartest entrepreneur, I think, in the space. All I'm also looking at is the pace of value transfer needs to increase, I think, to kind of meet just the level of transactions we're doing as a society. I know there's some tremendous volatility in this, but I think that the long-term prospects are just there. So if you're willing to take this journey with me, I'd love to have you partner with me. And I think partner in something that is going to be quite revolutionary in the financial transaction space, as well as a number of other spaces. So looking forward to getting some comments and feedback, and obviously investing together. Thank you so much.